Hi, in this tutorial we'll be looking at the explosion bullet time effect in Tyflow. To begin, we'll first create a really basic geometry. In this case, I'll be using a teapot. So I'll load that in, and I'll also load in the Tyflow object. Once that is done, we'll also load in the open up the Tyflow editor. In the editor, open up a birth object and select our teapot. Now we will load in a Voronoi fracture, click and drag that in, place it under birth objects. In display, set that from small dots to geometries. In 3ds Max, click on the teapot, right click, and hide selection so that we can only see the Tyflow teapot. Once that is done, we'll add in a physics shape. Drag that in, place it under Voronoi fracture, and as you can see, it's already taken effect. First of all, we need to, in Voronoi fracture, set that from 10 points to 1000 points so that the explosion is a bit more apparent. And second of all, we need to stop it from immediately taking shape, the explosion that is. To do that, we need to load in some physics switches. Load in the first one. The first one we'll leave at deactivate. This basically means that the explosion doesn't take place immediately. And now we'll load in another one. This one lets us tell Tyflow when to activate the explosion. So we'll set it from deactivate to dynamic activation. So select dynamic activation, and under timing, under on event entry, set that to frame. This lets us tell Tyflow when to explode at which frame in our animation. So under range, we'll set that to, let's just say something like 30 to 30. Once that is done, we'll just replay the animation, and you'll see that the explosion takes place at 30 frames in rather than immediately. Reset U. And let's just make the explosion a bit more volatile, as at the moment it's literally just looks like the teapot is just crumbling away. So to do that, we'll set a force, drag that in and place it in underneath the switches, and in 3ds Max, create, and in space warps, click on wind, click and drag to create it, and then we'll move it inside the teapot itself. So drag it, move it inside the teapot, let's move up a bit, and this is where our wind is. And now we will pick that and make sure we load it into Tyflow. Said the wrong thing. Yep. And then once we play it, we'll just test it. And something's gone a bit wrong. The teapot's flown into the air. The reason for that is because we also need to set a timer for the wind so that it activates when our explosion occurs. To do that, we change it from continuous to frame, and we'll set that to 30 to coincide with our explosion. So 30 to 30. And we'll see how that works. And at 30 seconds, we'll realize not much has changed. This is because our wind is really weak, so we need to change our modifiers of the wind. Change the turbulence, let's say 50, and frequency to 1. And I'll give that another go. And there we go, the wind is significantly stronger, and it looks a lot more like an explosion now, rather than just simply crumbling away. Once we are happy with that, we will begin with our animations. To do that, we will select our Tyflow icon first, and then we'll make sure enable caching is activated, and then in retimer, enable simulation retimer, tick that, and then we'll click on auto key at the very bottom. What we do now is we will, in the timeline, we'll go to roughly where our explosion takes place, which is 30 seconds, and we'll set a key here. This is basically the beginning of when our bullet time effect will start. So we click on keyframe, it will create a keyframe there. We'll move it further into roughly, let's say 34, and at 34 we can edit we can edit the keyframe at 34. So this basically lets us edit what happens during this sort of frame. So in the slider, we can move that up to, let's just say, 30, which is roughly where our explosion happened. So it'll be 32.1. So this basically means that at 34 frames, it will be playing the animation that occurred at the original 32.1 frames. This will help us create the slowed down bullet time effect. And then we repeat that process. Let's just say we drag it out to something like 50, and then we move the frames slightly up to, let's just say, 35. So this long gap here will basically be where our slow motion explosion takes place. We'll repeat the process again, let's just say 70, make it a bit faster, and maybe make it something like 50.5, and set another keyframe. And let's just say we want our teapot to reform back to a full teapot. So we set that up, so let's say 90, and then we'll bring the frame back down to a point in time where the teapot was whole. Let's just say 26, and we set that keyframe. And we go to auto key, and then we will play that animation again. Set it to the start, and we'll play it. So slow motion explosion, speeds up, and then rejoins back together. Yep, so that is the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something, and thank you.